Halo 5's multiplayer always resonated with me. In fact, it's one of my favorite multiplayer games of all time. Despite how much I love it though, I don't have that much playtime. The reason why is simply that I was always a PlayStation and PC guy, and I didn't have an Xbox. I eventually got one and was able to play Halo 5, but it was many years after the game's release. I guess I feel like I missed the boat with Halo 5 Guardians. What especially appealed to me was the ranked mode, but I never really gave it a go. Well, this year I decided that the game wasn't getting any younger. If I ever wanted to play Halo 5 ranked, there wasn't going to be a better time than now. So I dove into Halo 5's ranked mode. But I didn't just aimlessly play. I had a goal. I was determined to hit Platinum. Some of you may scoff at the Platinum goal. It's not exactly the top 500. Well, here's the little thing you don't understand. I'm bad at multiplayer Halo.
I could squash you like a bug right now.
So I'm not looking to be the best in the world here, okay? According to a deleted Reddit post I found, which definitely doesn't sound like a sketchy source at all, Platinum is slightly better than average. Given my prior skill at Halo, becoming better than average in a game people have been grinding at for 10 years was still ambitious to me. In fact, it was daunting. However, despite my lack of skill with Halo, Halo 5 always clicked with me a little bit more, and I'm a little bit better at it than a good number of multiplayer games I play, so I thought I stood a chance at least. I began my venture into Halo 5 Ranked, determined to hit Platinum, no matter how long it took, no matter how many times I got dunked on. So come and join me on my journey. We're going to see what makes the ranked mode so fun to try to improve at, and we're going to focus on what I picked up about the mechanics as I learned from my many mistakes. At the end, well, we'll see if I manage to hit Platinum. Honestly, the outcome shocked me. Before we get started, I just want to quickly plug my novel series. Along with doing YouTube, I'm also a science fiction writer. The Northfield series is a post-apocalyptic journey of a man struggling with the darkness of the world. If you like the grittiness of Reach and ODST in particular, I think you'd really enjoy it. With that, grab your ARs and your grenades. We're diving in. First, I'm going to give a small overview of Halo 5 for the uninitiated. Halo 5, like the Halos before it, is an arena shooter whose bread and butter is the 4v4 game modes. Slayer, Halo's term for Team Deathmatch, is the most popular. In Halo 5, you have a separate rank per game mode. So with that in mind, I exclusively played Slayer. Due to the game's age, I wanted to stick with the most populated game mode to avoid long queue times. Also, Slayer is a simple game mode, in concept at least. I had enough to learn already with the game's mechanics, and I wanted to avoid giving myself an aneurysm. So, let's go over what I already knew going into this ranked journey. Halo is a series built upon a combat triangle: shooting your gun, melee, and grenades. It sounds very simple, but the complexity comes from knowing when to use each of these tools. When you add on top of this map knowledge and positioning, Halo's combat becomes a dance. It's a complicated dance, yet it's still one that can become almost second nature and subconscious. When you enter a flow state in Halo and really lock in, there's not really anything quite like it. The skill gap of knowing where to be and how to use these tools is wide enough to accommodate scrub players like me all the way up to the pro circuit. Halo 5 layers an advanced movement system on top of these base mechanics, and it's what really sets the game apart. Your Spartan can thrust, charge, mantle, and ground pound. It significantly alters the feel and the tempo of the game. It's a very love it or hate it sort of game, with many classic players not resonating with the deviation. However, there are enough videos on that topic already.
You little... I got you!
It's all just an act.
Stop! Stop! He's already dead.
For me though, the new gameplay hits just right. But I know I'm biased. I love movement shooters, and Titanfall 2 is my favorite multiplayer shooter of all time. Halo 5's tempo is just perfect for me. It's fast, but it's not blisteringly fast. What the advanced movement does is make the positioning and movement aspect of the game more complicated. You have more tools at your disposal, which means, obviously, that you need to know when and where to use each one. All of this combines to make Halo 5 a distinctly sweaty game. I mean it. Even in non-ranked 4v4 modes, there is just this palpable sweat that oozes off of each game. Every player you come across seems like they're trying to break into the MLG scene. But honestly, it gives the game a unique charm. Let's be honest, I'm a little sweat too when playing, especially ranked. I'm out here grinding for platinum after all. But the thing is, if everybody is sweaty, then it just sort of becomes the vibe of the game. Halo 5 is about playing hard, trying to win, and getting better. If everybody is a sweat, well, then nobody is. That's how it works, right? Or something like that. I guess a nicer way to put it is that Halo 5 fosters a competitive atmosphere that's especially conducive to ranked play. It fosters this natural motivation to improve at the game and get a better grip on the mechanics. Slayer 2 is a deceptively complicated mode. Even though I said it's simple in concept, it's not really all that simple in practice. You see, in Halo, everybody starts out with the same weapons. There are power weapons that spawn throughout the map, like the sniper, shotgun, and rocket launcher. Controlling these weapons and the power positions that they spawn in is really the key to winning. Even if your team is losing, getting a hold of power weapons can turn the tides. But doing this is harder than it sounds. You need to learn when to camp out at a weapon spawn or when to dive in to swoop the drop. It all feeds back into that positioning and overall strategic play. So that's what I knew coming in from my prior experience with Halo 5 and the Halo games in general. You could spend years and years learning the ins and outs and still find countless ways to improve. Unfortunately, that's what many of my opponents have been doing. I had a lot to learn if I was going to hit Platinum. But there's no way to do that except to start playing and learn on the go. With rank, the very first thing you start out with is your placement matches. You have to play 10 matches, during which the game assesses your skill and assigns your initial rank. So I braced myself and hopped in. From the get-go, it was evident that I still had a long way to go. But to my surprise, I didn't get absolutely stomped. I was holding my own, at least a little bit. I feel like I was in the perfect environment to learn. If you play with opponents that are too easy, you can't really learn anything from watching them. And if you play against opponents that are way better than you, generally you spend more time at the loading screen than actually playing. The sweet spot, for me at least, is playing against opponents that are slightly better than me. I could learn by watching them play, and then I could test my newfound knowledge against them. I ran up against plenty of players in this sweet spot, so I started to observe. I incorporated what I learned into my own play, and game over game I saw improvement. Let's go over what I learned, and break it down into each of the gameplay aspects that I talked about earlier. We'll start with shooting and guns. Shooting the bad guy before he shoots you, well, that's the cornerstone of just about every FPS. In Halo 5, how do you get better about burning down enemies quicker with your gun? Well, headshots are king in this game. Headshots melt shields quickly, and they're generally a one-shot on unshielded opponents. With that in mind, actually hitting shots is a great way to take down targets quicker. But of course, aim better is pretty obvious advice, and if you suck in any FPS lobby, well, you might get a little piece of hate mail that tells you your aim needs work.
Okay. Let's keep this a nice, friendly, clean game.
Who keeps inviting this guy?
Along with being obvious, it's not very actionable advice. Someone can tell you to aim better, but that doesn't mean you immediately can. Aim is something that comes naturally and gradually and improves over time. So let's focus on the actionable things I learned. The thing that gave me the most immediate improvement was learning when and where to use specific weapons. The most important breakthrough for me centered around the starter weapons. In Halo 5's arena mode, everybody starts with an assault rifle and a pistol. They're the weapons you can always rely on getting your hands on when you spawn, so it's imperative to understand how and when to use them. I knew going into Halo 5 that the pistol is the game's utility weapon. It's universally good in pretty much all situations except for super long range. If you search up any pro play, you'll see this is evident immediately. Unless the pros have a power or precision weapon, 90% of the time they are relying on the pistol. Knowing that this was the meta at the upper echelons of play, I started off Halo 5 ranked by pretty much only using the pistol, focused on landing precision headshots. In theory, it was the fastest way to burn down opponents. In theory. However, as I made my way through matches, I began to notice something. I was getting killed by the AR a lot.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
Even the players better than me were killing me with the AR. Did they not know that the pistol had better killing times? Well, yeah, of course they knew that. I doubt there are many people playing Guardians 10 years on who don't know that the pistol is good. I decided to take what I saw and apply it to my own gameplay. I started to play around with the AR a little bit more. I discovered quickly that the AR is a very effective tool. It may not put as much damage downrange, but it still kills pretty quickly, and it's more consistent damage. See, the pistol's better theoretical DPS doesn't do much if you're not hitting all your shots. When I started to realize when I was consistently missing my shots, that's when things started to really click. See, I was somewhat okay with the pistol in mid to close mid range. I really struggled though when enemies were very close, rushing me and applying pressure. I thought I was just choking my shots, which, well, I'm guilty as charged. But there is more to it than that. In close range, your opponent can move a lot further across your sight line a lot more quickly, especially when they throw in thrust, charges, and ground pounds. You need to move your stick around a lot more to keep on target, which naturally leads to more misses. So in these close range melees, I found the reliability of the assault rifle to often be more effective than praying I clutch up all my pistol shots. As I got more comfortable with the AR, I also started to incorporate more advanced strategies that I observed my opponents use. See, the AR is pretty good at burning down shields. Where it really falls off is on unshielded opponents. The pistol can one-shot headshot, so the AR just doesn't compete very well. A combo I got a lot more comfortable with is the AR start to melee finish. You use the AR to burn down their shields, then clean them up with melee. This was good in hyper close range. You know, those fights that feel more like a scramble brawl than a dance. Landing the AR shots, then finishing with the melee was a good way to secure kills. Another powerful combo was an AR opener to a pistol finish. Again, you use the AR to burn down enemy shields, then finish with a pistol one-shot headshot. This was pretty effective when I caught an enemy from behind at mid-range. I didn't need to worry as much about optimum DPS since I had the upper hand, so the consistency of this combo worked well. Better than botching pistol headshots and giving them the opportunity to counter. The pistol still reigned supreme at close mid-range for me, so I would generally start with my pistol equipped if I was in those sorts of engagements. If I was in CQB, I would equip my AR. Generally, most engagements were in the close mid-range, so the pistol was still the workhorse for me, but the AR helped fill in the gaps where I really struggled. The core takeaway, I guess, is that the best strategy for the pros and upper echelon of players wasn't necessarily the best strategy for me at my skill level. The difference really boils down to aim skill. As my aim naturally improves, I would consider switching back to using the pistol in more of these scenarios. I took this learning and I applied it to the rest of the weapon sandbox. I freed myself to play around with more of the weapons scattered across the map and discover which ones were most effective for me, regardless of any preconceived meta. The weapon that resonated with me the most was the Covenant Carbine. To be honest, I don't know where it rests in the meta, but I could consistently shred with this thing. I could get the most kills and the most damage with it. I also came to appreciate the light rifle. I could get mid to long range kills with it pretty consistently. The Brute Plasma Rifle was good for melting away enemy shields, although that one was more situational. I learned where they spawned on the maps, and I prioritized getting my hands on them whenever possible. At least in my games, people didn't really seem to go for drops aside from the power weapons. Again, I don't know where they really reside in the meta, but the Covenant Carbine really worked for me, and that was most important. With that said, I could get my hands on the carbine pretty reliably, assuming it was on a given map. Using the weapon I felt the most comfortable with tilted the odds in my favor, and I might have gotten 1 or 2 more kills and 1 or 2 less deaths with it. Even though the difference may seem small, in Slayer it was important. Most of my games were pretty close, so even 2 to 3 kills could mean the difference between winning and losing. So I started thinking more situationally about the maps, where drops were and which non-power weapons would best facilitate me. I could use the DMR or BR for encounters with longer sight ranges, and then maybe use something like the Brute Shot for close range. Again, anything I could do to give myself an edge, and win maybe 1 or 2 gunfights really added up. That's what I learned about the base weapon sandbox. Let's talk about the power weapons. The shotguns, the energy swords, the snipers, and the launchers. They're the best weapons in the game, able to rack up kills for your team easily and quickly. To be honest, I tried to avoid these weapons. Why on earth would I do that, you ask? Well, I have a tendency to completely choke with these weapons.
It's showtime, freaks. Our bad.
Our bad? Our bad?
I miss my sniper shots, and I die with the energy sword. And worst of all, I miss my rockets, even when the enemy is 5 feet in front of me. In ranked, I'm playing for team wins. So I figured the best way for me to be a team player was to let a teammate take them. I trusted their ability more than mine, at least when it came to the power weapons. I generally tried to clear out the spawn and clear the way for them. However, this simply wasn't always practical. Sometimes I'd be the only one near a power spawn, or my teammates just wouldn't pick it up for whatever reason. Sometimes I guess I was the chosen one. And well, I'd still choke a lot of the time. However, I eventually noticed one thing that helped me do better on average. I had a tendency to use my power weapon ammunition way too soon. I was so afraid of dying with a fully stocked power weapon and just giving it to the enemy team. So I would blast away. This was especially true with the rocket launcher. I needed to fight this temptation and exercise a little bit of patience. Power weapons, by their nature, put the advantage in your corner. It's not super often that you're caught completely unaware and have no time to react. It generally works better to get yourself into a position where you can do maximum damage with these weapons, even if it means holding onto them a little bit longer. What I really came to appreciate is that misses with these weapons are essentially giving points to the enemy team anyway. I mean, yeah, sometimes this meant I got burned. The enemy could ambush me and then have a fully stocked power weapon to use.
Okay, get in.
But on average, taking time to use them effectively worked better. So those were my key takeaways with the weapons. Let's move on to the second part of the offensive triangle, melee. It flows very naturally into the weapons conversation. In essence, it's another pocket weapon at your disposal. The melee in Halo 5 is powerful, and it's even more potent with the game's advanced movement. It's easy to get in close and start bashing away. It's a great finisher on enemies, and sometimes even a good opener. The true skill, as always, is knowing when and where to use it. Melee in particular becomes this intuitive feel thing, so it's a bit harder to articulate. But there are a few actionable things I came away with. First, I came to appreciate just how much range the melee has. The lunge is pretty pronounced, meaning you can hit people from further away than you may initially think. It's also important to be aware that your enemies can do this too. I had to build muscle memory to know when to melee and how to incorporate it more into my gameplay. For instance, I spoke about the AR to melee bash earlier. An important thing I realized is that if you and an enemy melee at the same time, there's a good chance that both attacks connect. What this means is that kill trading is pretty common in Halo 5. This is something that can either be to your detriment or benefit. If you're beating an opponent in close range, they're likely to lunge at you. Even if you hit the melee button first, there's a good chance you're going to trade. In a fight, you would have otherwise won if it was guns only. So you really have to watch out for enemy melee. If it's a fight you're going to win, it's often best to thrust out of range before planting your killing shots. But this goes the other way too. If it's a gunfight I felt I was going to lose, going for the melee was a good last bet. Oftentimes I would trade, killing an enemy I otherwise wouldn't have. At the very least, I'd do one last big chunk of damage to the enemy that my teammates could hopefully clean up. Okay, let's move on to the last part of Halo 5's offensive triangle, grenades.
Let's eat. Oops.
Grenades in Halo 5 are a complicated beast. You can make videos upon videos of how to use them effectively. I'm going to focus on a couple strats that I started to implement with the frag grenade. The frag in Halo 5 is hard to get used to, especially if you're coming from other shooters like Call of Duty. The blast radius is relatively small, and you can't cook them. The fuse is pretty long too. This means you have to be precise, and you also have to anticipate your enemy's movement. Throwing a grenade right at your enemy's feet generally doesn't work, because they'll move out of its radius before it goes off. If you're first starting off Halo 5, you're probably going to miss most of the grenades you throw. I've never been very good at them, but while playing ranked I learned, mostly by watching how enemies damaged and killed me with them. The first thing I really came to appreciate was how effective rebounding the grenades are. If you just toss a grenade into the room, enemies will see it rolling in and have time to thrust out of the way. However, if you rebound the grenade off the wall first, it will enter the arena at a sharper and less expected angle. More importantly though, by rebounding, you're increasing the travel time of the grenade before it enters the room. This means there's less time between when an enemy sees the grenade and when it goes off. This tip is especially helpful when it comes to inclines. If you lob a grenade, it is likely to overshoot your enemies. But if you bounce it off a ramp right in front of you, the grenade will shoot right at your enemies. I still have a long way to go with placing grenades, but I found myself getting hits more often. The second technique is even more important. I came to really understand how grenades in Guardians are just as much of a defensive tool as they are offensive. The long fuse time makes them great area of denial tools. If you're losing a gunfight, tossing grenades at the entryway and backing out is a great way of stopping your enemies from pushing you. It can buy you an invaluable few seconds to reposition, heal up, or wait for teammates. The same area of denial tactic can go for power weapons. You can pepper the area with grenades to buy your team some time and keep your enemies back. I found that frags ended up saving my life more often than they took it from the enemies. In Slayer, that's just as good. One less death means one less point for the enemy team. Now that we've gone through the offensive part of the game, we're going to talk about movement and positioning. To be honest, I still haven't gotten the hang of positioning, and it's the part of my game that needs the most work. The same goes for the advanced movement abilities. In particular, I haven't figured out when to actually use the ground pound and charge abilities. However, I made one change to how I use thrust, and that made a night and day difference. See, I noticed that I had a really bad habit. I kept getting burned because the thrust had a longer cooldown than I expected. I used my thrust to move around the arena. If I had an enemy in my sights, I would dash forward to engage. This meant I was essentially burning my thrust, which is one of your best tools in a gunfight, before the battle even began. I couldn't dash out to avoid enemy fire or grenades, and I turned myself into a sitting duck, at least by Halo 5 standards. By coming to understand the thrust's longer cooldown and waiting to use it until I was actually in gunfights, I had a lot more mobility and was better equipped to handle fights. And this change alone made a big difference. So these were the different techniques I learned while playing my placement matches. I would play a match, reflect on what I learned, and discover one or two of these tips, and then try to integrate them into the next match. You'll notice a pattern with these tips, and I touched upon it earlier. They are small, yet actionable changes to my gameplay that I can incorporate almost immediately, without any improvement to my natural ability. What this means is that I saw small but noticeable improvement with each match. Applying these tips in each game meant oftentimes one less death for me and one more kill. The Slayer matches oftentimes came down to less than 5 kills of difference, so I really felt the impact of each tweak. Even over my placement matches, I found myself getting better and my team winning more often. Finally, I had completed my placement matches. I anxiously awaited my placement and see how far I had to climb to platinum. Lo and behold, I hit platinum straight out of my placement matches. And man, I was ecstatic to see this. I always felt like I clicked more with Halo 5 than other multiplayer shooters, and this was affirmation of that fact for me. Now, I realize that platinum is small potatoes, and it's probably still considered bad for a lot of people. But for me, jumping into ranked mode that people have been grinding for a decade, my little platinum was an accomplishment. And well, since I've been sharing my Halo tips, I'll go further and share a little life tip. Taking joy in the small accomplishments in your life is a great way to feel fulfilled and to find enjoyment in the things you do. If you're someone gunning for top 500 in a game, but if you don't have any fun climbing the ranks or take pride in your improvement, then I don't imagine you're really having a great time at the end of the day. So I'm taking my win and I'm running with it. Halo 5 is a game that feels really good to play and to learn from, and I had a lot of fun during my ranked experience. I hope you enjoyed the video and were entertained by it. This video diverges a bit from the content I generally make, so please give it a like if you enjoyed it. I'm trying to gauge whether to make more content like this in the future, and the video's performance will help determine that. As always, if you want to support me further, please consider checking out the Northfield Saga. Links are in the video description. Either way, I really appreciate you making it all the way through. With that, we've reached the end. Until next time.